Hi, everybody. Wait a minute, where's the audience? There is none. We have no audience tonight. The audience machine isn't working. I'm going to do something tonight that's a little bit different. I'm going to do a show without an audience. I'll tell you why. I was watching the, like everyone else, I was watching the late night thing unfold, you know, Conan and Jay, and now Conan's gone and Jay's back, and there was a lot of attention on late night, and I'm no different from anyone else. I was kind of interested in it, maybe a little more interested in it, because I kind of work in that area. I don't think this is really a late night talk show. I mean, I think it started as that, but I think it's turned into something else. It's kind of our nightly train wreck that we have here. But I became fascinated with late night again when I watched this great thing unfolding. When I say great, this terrible thing unfolding at NBC. And I thought about late night television, and the way I see it, and this will probably upset some people, and I don't care, but the way I see it is the late night television, in the way that I understand it was and appreciate it, was constructed in the 50s, really. Steve Allen, Jack Parr, and then Johnny Carson built this monster, this huge thing that became the late night television brand. And then that brand was lovingly and cleverly deconstructed by David Letterman. And everyone else in late night, as far as I'm concerned, me included, is unimportant. So what I started to become interested in was the show that I actually do at night, because I thought, well, this show has some history that goes back beyond me. There's Craig Kilburn, my predecessor in the show, had a very specific style, not mine, but it was his, and he owned it. And then before that, there was a gentleman by the name of Tom Snyder, who was a very interesting broadcaster, a cranky man by all accounts. I never really spent any time with him, but cranky and difficult and brilliant. And he would do this show every night with no audience, and he would just talk to people, which now when I see the studio without an audience in it, it kind of makes sense, because this place really isn't built to do late night talk shows in, of the type that I'm talking about, with the audience and the band and all that. There's just no room and there's no facilities. So I thought I would like to try that tonight. And then I thought, well, there's nothing new in this. This experiment that I'm doing here, it's not an experiment in television. Larry King does it every night. He talks to some people every night. You know, Charlie Rose does it. Joy Behar does it, doesn't she, on CNN? Lots of people do it. But I just thought I would try it for me. Now, if you watch this show, you watch it because you found it. No one told you it was on. There's no bus ads for Craigie. There's no billboards. There's no promotion. You found this show because you found it. And if you've stayed with it any length of time, it's because you're interested, maybe. And I am. And I feel, I kind of deny this quite a lot, but I do feel a certain connection and a certain kinship with the audience because of that. And so I want you to, is it indulging me? Yeah, it probably is. Indulge me tonight. I'm going to talk to one man. Now, it's not just any man. The man I'm going to talk to tonight is, it's really protection for me. Stephen Fry, who will be the guest on the show tonight, is a very brilliant man, a very clever man. To be honest, I knew him in London in the 1980s, and I was kind of intimidated by him. He's very clever and very successful, and I thought, well, if I can't do the show tonight, he would be able to handle it fine on his own. So, in the words of my predecessor, the late and much lamented Mr. Tom Snyder, sit back, fire up the Colourtinis, and watch the pictures as they fly through the air. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. Welcome to Los Angeles, California. Welcome to the Late Late Show. I am your host, TV's Craig Ferguson. I'd like to welcome tonight a friend of mine. He's an actor, a comedian, a friend of the show. Please welcome the lovely Stephen Fry. I'll have to clap myself, Stephen, because we don't have it. Thank you for doing this.
I'm honoured to be a little white mouse in your laboratory experiment.
Yes,
really.
It's not really that much of an experiment, though, is it? I mean, people have been
talking to people in this CBS building here. They've been going around as if suddenly a new alien species has been discovered. It's the most exciting day in the history of this broadcasting station.
Really?
Unbelievable. It's extraordinary. People are going, will it work? Is it possible to talk to someone without people whooping in the background?
I must say I'm a little bit nervous about it. Because the idea of just talking to someone, it does leave you and me kind of vulnerable to anything that comes up.
Yeah, yeah.
And I wonder if anything. Well, let's start at the. Let's start at the beginning for me with you, which is I used to watch you on British television when I was working in a bar.
It's a dangerous place for you to work in
Yeah,
these
it
days.
was actually, yeah. Actually, I was kind of good at working behind a bar because I made sure everyone else was drunk, which they liked, and then I didn't look so bad around them. But I used to watch you, and I always thought, all through the 80s, when I would bump into you in London when I was getting into show business and you were doing terribly well in Britain, I always held you up as someone who had their life completely together.
It's strange, that, isn't it? It's like, I mean, this is sort of a truth about all humans, is that we, you know, like you arrive at a party,
right,
and everybody's in your mind armed with a club, and all you have is a little Q-tip behind your back, and you think somehow everybody else was at a lesson at school where they learnt some life trick that you will never know because you missed that lesson and you'll never catch up.
I'm fascinated.
And they think the same as of you.
I'm fascinated to hear you say that because I had always assumed that you were, until I read actually your autobiography, I'd always assumed that you were the golden gifted child, you know, the Cambridge education, the studying of the classics, the knowing lots of clever people who were very attractive and rich. And I had a terrible chip in my shoulder about that particular group of people. I had kind of grown up thinking that the intelligent,
you were ghastly. We're all horrible, spoiled, pampered, overpraised, and I knew that that's how everybody thought of me. And I thought I was from a generation that was born at least 20 years too late. That maybe if I'd been born in the 50s, when wearing a tweed jacket and smoking a pipe and talking about Catullus and Ovid was somehow acceptable and you were admired for it, whereas I felt that I was born into a post-punk era in which the idea of even speaking in sentences that didn't break up at the end and go sort of and like and oh I wonder, but just having an articulate voice was in itself an offence. It was like rubbing people's faces in the dirt, and that I was hated for it.
Yes, punk was it did have a real anti-intellectual streak.
So I genuinely felt that simply my affect, my manner, everything about me would guarantee to make people despise me.
Do you think that still exists?
There are parts of me that think that, yes.
Yeah.
But I know that they would find me even less acceptable if I fraudulently attempted to be demotic and street and hip. It just doesn't suit me. It's like when I wear sunglasses. No matter how bright the sun, people say, what are you doing wearing sunglasses?
Yeah,
they know
you're English.
Yeah,
you should accept the brightness.
But there are some British people, no one would say that to Mick Jagger.
Right.
You know, there are British people who are cool, hard to believe as it is. And then there are people like me who just seem to be made of tweed. I can't help it, no matter how hard I try. And even if you tell people things about yourself that show your difference. In England, for example, the fact that I'm a Jew, the fact that I was in prison by the time I was 17,
yes.
The fact that I was expelled from schools, that I'm gay, that I was
You're really the
drug addict. I was a drug addict for 15 years.
Yeah.
Not that I wish to boast about these things.
I was shocked by your drug use when I heard about it. Because I was doing drugs and drinking at the same time, but it was very obvious to everyone around me that I was doing that. You were kind of, you know, you were talking and you were writing musicals and you were very productive.
I used to say that I took cocaine to calm me down. I was the only person I knew.
Did it have that effect?
Well, this is another thing about me, which is very tedious and people get bored with hearing this from everybody, but I am bipolar as well. And so I do have manic moments when I'm extraordinarily energized. And so, if you like, the excuse for, if such a thing can be acceptable for taking drugs was that if you are subject to mood changes over which you have no control, it's very tempting to take some drug or substance which can control your moods, because then you have a semblance, or a pretense at least, of being able to control your moods.
Were you aware of that when you were taking that?
No, I think, as I say, I don't want to sound like a justification with what is a stupid act and a tedious act amongst show business people. Oh, yawn, he took coke, big deal. You know, I know how dull it is to hear, you know, reformed addicts going on about it. But nonetheless, I'll risk that by saying that, it is a definite... I'm sure there are lots of people watching who know that feeling of mood change when you wake up one morning and you feel ghastly for no reason. I mean, all of us can feel ghastly because there's a bill that's come in, or our children have misbehaved, or some awful thing has happened that is genuinely upsetting. But when the sun is still shining and things are no different from they were the day before, but you feel you feel worthless to the nth degree. You feel absolutely like
you still get that today?
Excrement. Yeah, not today, fortunately. It's downright.
Well, right, but you still experience it.
I do, yes. I get these swings.
And how do you treat it now?
I don't actually. I made a documentary, two-hour films on this subject. I spoke over here to a friend of mine, the actress Carrie Fisher.
Well, yes, I've spoken to Carrie a lot.
I'm sure you have.
It's very visible with her.
With her.
If you're, you know, who you're going to get, lady up or lady down. I mean,
see, I'm actually cyclothymic.
What does that actually? Does that mean? Is that a sort of Cambridge version of bipolar?
Well, in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, it is like a lower version of bipolar. It's bipolar 1, bipolar 2, and some people in America call this bipolar light.
Well, why is it different from the other ones then?
Well, the serious thing about bipolarity, which used to be called manic depression, of course, is that it is a very morbid, as doctors would call it, a very morbid condition. It increases your chances of an early death by a considerable factor.
From suicide?
From suicide and from neglect of one's diet, neglect of exercise, and of course, self-medication, as it's called, i.e., you know, basically addiction and the use of all kinds of substances.
When you put it like that, it makes me think that, and I'm not pushing an agenda for this at all, but it does sound like perhaps there's a lot more of a around than one would initially think.
Yeah, I mean, there's a danger of overdiagnosis, of course, and the purpose of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, as it's called, which defines it, is to stop people making claims in court or for compensation just because they're feeling a bit hacked off. They've decided.
Well, that's the other side of it. I mean, it seems to me, particularly in Los Angeles, you see a lot of this where there is a sort of the pathology of the human condition, that everything has a sickness and an excuse. Everyone has a, well, I did this because I did. I mean, I don't think that... I was quite interested to watch... Did you watch Tiger Woods'
I did. I'm afraid I cried. I mean, I'm a real sentimentalist, but
yeah,
I couldn't help it.
I was interested by it, though, because he didn't... He kind of said that he talked a little bit with the Buddhist faith, which I found kind of fascinating.
I was surprised by that, but on the other hand, why you know, sportsmen talk about faith all the time.
Right, of course,
used to it, I suppose. I mean, one of the odd things about that is, I don't know about you, you know this thing trolling? Troll?
Is it something
like a little Norwegian thing that lives under a bridge?
Right, you answer 3 questions, you cross the bridge, or...
Well, that word is used to describe aggressive, mostly unpleasant comments on web pages.
Yes, of course, I know that.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
Right.
And it has become almost impossible, I find now, to look at something online, like the Tiger Woods thing. I watched that online. Right. Without your eye thinking, I mean, I don't want to go below the picture because people will be saying such vile things.
Absolutely. I saw that with my son, when Soupy Sales, who was an American comedian, a groundbreaking comedian, he died a few months ago, wasn't it, when Soupy Sales died? And my son, who's almost 9, wanted to see him. And wanted to see, because he'd heard the news, and was he funny? So I went on the YouTube to you know, to show him it, and underneath people were saying mean things and cussing and using the F word about Soupy Sales. How can you hate Soupy? Anyone called Soupy, you know? I mean, but Soupy Sales, you know, saying mean things about them, and I think what happens is that people can't help but declare themselves.
Yeah. And we now have an open society, which is an incredibly good thing, and I wouldn't for a minute want to take anything away from it. I love the world of technology enormously, and the world of social networking and all the things like Twitter that I know.
Right, we should talk about it. I actually have to take a break. I forgot that we're doing a TV show, so let's take a break, and we'll be right back with Stephen Fry, everybody. Welcome back, everybody. I'm here with Stephen Fry and not an audience, and we're beginning to talk about Twitter, which you kind of got me into, and a lot of other people. Were you involved at the very beginning with the Twitter?
Well, pretty much. I mean, I'm not involved in the business side of it, or the biz side, one should call it, which is a little in-joke, because the founder is called Biz Stone.
Oh, that's but I wish there were an audience here. They would be rolling around.
We
would have warmed them into a fever pitch over that stuff.
But I was involved a year and a half, 2 years ago. Let's say I joined, and I've always been an early adopter of these technological things. I just love it. I don't know why. It's quite mysterious to me in some ways because, as we were saying earlier, people perceive me as rather old-fashioned, and they imagine I would go around with an ancient fountain pen, if not a goose quill, and are astonished that actually I love technology. I was the second person in Europe to own an Apple Mac back in January '84, the first being Douglas Adams, the author of Hitchhiker's Guide, who was a friend, and we both, like children on the first day of a new, a toy coming out, we both rushed to get hold of one, and then for months we would go around to each other's places swapping it. And when new things come out, I'm desperate to be a part of them.
But I think that shows it's not necessarily the idea of people expect you to be old-fashioned. I think it's the idea of a good and open mind to embrace the idea of it, or a new idea, or at least experiment with something.
Yeah.
The Twitter thing fascinated me because I expected it, much like the trolling and the mean comments that we were talking about earlier. I expected that. It seems to occur a lot less on Twitter.
That, isn't it? And it's found a sort of level of politeness and decency. You get the odd snarky thing, and it's extraordinary, as anybody who tweets a lot will know, that within 140 characters, how attitude can come through.
Yeah.
And you can instantly detect when someone is being snarky and unpleasant and snitty. But
do you think that it affects thought? Do you think people begin to think differently if they think in these sound bites? If you construct... I mean, if you're Bertrand Russell, you don't say, well, I have to get, Principia Mathematica into 140 characters,
There are two ways of looking at that. I mean, one is to say that rationally it ought to, but I've always been against rationalism. I've always been an empiricist. It's just look and try and see what examples there are. And a good thing is Robert Graves wrote a very famous essay on poetry in which he said, can it pass what he called the telegram test? If you remember, there was a long period in which cables, telegrams were sent, wires as they were called, in which, again, words were very expensive. It was, a narrow bandwidth.
Right.
So people used to say, coming tomorrow, make room ready.
How old Cary Grant? Cary Grant, fine, how are you?
Exactly, that great. Right. Exactly, and using the word stop for a full stop.
Right.
And again, very terse. And Robert Graves said that poetry, which is, after all, the highest expression that we have, linguistically, should actually be that concentrated, like a telegram. And he had great fun criticizing a Wordsworth poem called The Solitary Reaper. Behold her single in the field, yon solitary Highland lass, reaping and singing to herself. And he said, this is bad poetry because it actually is tautological. It's, here's a good word, pleonastic.
I have absolutely no idea. I'm thinking about dinosaurs when you say that.
It does sound like a pleonasm is like a repetition, an unnecessary repetition, like a tautology. It says, behold her single in the field, yon solitary Highland lass, reaping and singing to herself. So he said 3 times that she's on her own. Now, to Robert Graves, that is a bad example of poetry, and actually he would argue that if he'd tweeted it, he would have concentrated his mind better and come up with a better use of language. And actually, that's my argument about Twitter, is because you have to stop and think, oh, I've only got 140 characters for this. You can compress.
Everybody edits.
Yeah, and people are, in that sense, poetic. There's a concretization of what they're saying, which is rather often very elegant and delightful.
Do you think there is a bigger window into contemporary psyche and human by looking at these things? Does it give you because it is a kind of a marketing man's dream. You get to see what everybody is thinking.
I think, there's an element to that. It reminds me, there's a famous passage where Sherlock Holmes, in one of the Sherlock Holmes stories, talks about what were known as the agony columns. That's to say, the sort of personal columns at the back of newspapers.
Right.
And he would talk about, listen to all these cries and sobs and heart-rending noises coming from the millions of people strangers trying to contact each other, trying to contact other strangers, trying to sell things, trying to buy things. All these noises and whispers coming from the compressed humanity. And you could argue that really since the Industrial Revolution, this has just been the same thing, but it's increased and it's increased and it's become closer. A good example, people moan about text abbreviations and say how terrible that is. But actually, if they look in the 18th century, time of Jefferson and people like that, when writing letters was very expensive again, it was the narrow bandwidth, people used to write YR for your, and they would write
they would
PLS for please,
yeah.
exactly the same principle.
Right.
Because it was expensive to send a lot of text, and they were hardly illiterate people.
No, they weren't. What about the use of, you were talking about it's an open society, and we're doing a broadcast television show now, which I forgot about until I started talking about it again. But if the idea of censorship for profanity or control, do you think there is, I mean, because there are, it's really the Wild West still in terms of the internet. There is no real control, no real kind of policing of it that I can see. Would you advocate that?
No, personally I wouldn't. I mean, I'm pretty much a libertarian when it comes to that kind of thing. I personally have never understood why people are offended by references to particular parts of the body over other parts of the body. Why,
I don't understand.
Why testicles should be more offensive than knuckles seems to me a matter of cultural choice.
I call my testicles my knuckles anyway, and they do look a bit knuckly.
I know, but some people are, and they say that it's, they're hung up about sex. There's a big shame thing about sex.
Are you hung up about sex? I mean, you're a gay man. You've clearly had to, think about how you were going to explain that.
I have to confess that deep within me are the same strange hang-ups that most people have. If I saw two people making love in the street, I would regard it as a very different sight to two people shaking hands in the street or two people eating together.
It's a very different act. Yeah. I mean, the act confers a different intimacy.
And you might say there's almost a sacredness about it, which means that one of the reasons we don't want to be a voyeur to people's, activities.
Right.
Or that might be exciting and for all kinds of reasons.
But it's exciting because it is a taboo. If the act itself is sacred, then the excitement is surely within the taboo of watching the sacred act and being profane around the sacristy of that. The idea of kind of how naughty can we be. But I always thought that about cocaine, actually. That whenever I took cocaine, and this is why I was very different from you when you took it, because I think most people, when they take cocaine, they start thinking, what's the worst thing I can get up to this evening? How awful can I be? And I don't think you really behave that way.
I used to play Scrabble with myself on the computer.
Well, perhaps that's how bad you can be. But the Scrabble on the computer is. I still do that obsessively.
It's
on
weird.
my Scrabble.
Yes, it's something about one's mind. But just to pinch the loaf of that thought, as it were, if an alien was looking down on us and inspecting our language, they would see that the worst thing we do on this planet is we torture, we kill, we abuse, we harm people. We're cruel. And those are the things of which we should be ashamed. Amongst the best things we do is we breed children and we raise them and we make love to each other, we adore each other, we are affectionate and fond of each other. Those are the good things we do. And they would say, how odd that the language for the awful things is used casually all the time. Oh, the traffic was agony, it was hell, it was cruel. Oh, it was torture waiting in line. So you use words like torture. That's the worst word.
Right.
And yet, if we use the F word, which is the word for generating our species, for showing physical affection one to another, then we're taken off air and accused of being wicked and irresponsible and a bad influence to children. Now, we're part of this culture, so we often don't question it. But if you think of someone from outside it, it is very strange.
We are very weird indeed.
We are so it is entirely true.
Hey, we've got to take a break, Stephen, apparently. We'll be right back with Stephen Fry, everyone.
Enjoy your break.
Craig Ferguson's dark, massive physique can be dangerous in the wrong hands. What appears to be a large birthmark in the shape of a referee's whistle offers invigorating surprises.
How very strange.
I've completely forgotten that.
Well, I don't remember it. That was 6 months before I went to rehab.
It was a game, I think. I think you were a contestant on a game.
It was a sketch, and it was 1991, right? It was an AIDS benefit in London.
Yeah.
You were hosting, I think, or you certainly were very much involved.
I was. I directed it.
Right. So that would be involved in directing it, and then. That sketch, it was yourself, Hugh Laurie, Emma Freud, I think,
right,
and me. And Hugh, of course, has lapsed into obscurity in America.
I don't know. He's a cleaner at Fox Studios. I
That's,
go and
it's
feed him there
unbelievable what's happened to Hugh here, right?
Yes, I've been thinking about this a lot because at the moment I'm writing the second volume of my autobiography, which covers the years when I met Hugh at university and we worked together. And it's sort of unbelievable, but it's so not unbelievable as well.
In a way, he's a very talented actor.
He's very talented. He's got a fantastic charisma about him.
Yes.
From the earliest time when people saw him at a party, they would kind of go, who's that guy?
Well, I remember Emma Thompson talking about him as how he's the most gorgeous creature she ever saw when she first went to university.
Totally smitten by him,
I
remember.
Yeah. And now he's become this rather limpy, cranky American drug addict doctor.
It's strange because he also had a very traditional British upbringing. Went to Eton College and Cambridge and
well,
all those things.
You are, I think, the quintessential Englishman, but yet you're very American as well. Do you have a place here? I take it, right?
Yes, here in Hollywood.
Right.
I love America. I used to live in New York and I have an apartment there. I absolutely adore this country. Like you, I feel I could live here for the rest of my life.
Yeah, I'm completely smitten to you.
But you're a citizen now.
I am. Yeah. I would you do that?
I would. I mean, I'm a resident alien at the moment, which is charming enough, and I feel pride in America. But then I felt pride in America before I even stepped foot here. It's a very odd thing.
I know what you mean.
I would watch movies and I know something like John Ford's Young Mr. Lincoln, and I would feel a sort of emotional whoomph inside me, as if it was the founding of my country, and America has that, It's
well, in a way, I think it is, isn't it? Yeah. Because America is a country founded by forward thinkers. As far as I know, it's the first real post-Enlightenment country, right? And certainly political system. And the idea that I have. It began when I became a citizen. I did it very publicly. Well, as publicly as this show will allow. Yeah. And I was fascinated. It was at the end of the Bush-Cheney administration, and I was kind of interested to see how Americans were on the point of being discouraged. Yeah. And I thought this is terrible in America that people should be discouraged. Though of all things, I think Americans are optimists. Wouldn't you think?
That is, it's their abiding. I mean, if there isn't a sort of national American emotion, I would call it optimism. If there's a national English one, I would call it embarrassment. I mean, not even pessimism. It's just shame, embarrassment, confusion. I said in the book that I noticed you have there.
Somebody should probably plug it.
But that if we say only in America, you hear that phrase, it always refers to something astounding, something new, novel, remarkable, brave, bold, zany, ridiculous, colourful, all in America. If you said only in Britain, it would be something cold,
that's horrible,
damp, Kiwi,
only
miserable,
in Britain,
negative. Oh God, only in Britain.
Now, why do you think that is? More so about the Brits than the Americans. I think the Americans.
It's a very interesting point, and actually, that thing we were talking about earlier, being bipolar. I don't want to bang that drum too much, but there is a theory, and it's a beguiling one, which is that if you think of the population of America, with two incredibly important exceptions, that's to say most of the black population and the Native American population, the rest came here by choice.
Right.
They wanted to come. They wanted to leave Europe, mostly Europe, and come here and start a new life. So, in a sense, the gene pool is people who said, no, this isn't good enough. There can be something better. I'm leaving. And they left behind people who said, oh, I daren't.
Oh, yeah, we will stay.
I think we'll stay. So Europe is just basically a gene pool of people whose ancestors said, oh, I don't think I can risk. No, I can't risk it. America is a gene pool of people say, let's risk it.
Yeah, let's
try it.
And you think that's still
I feel it. It's certainly in the air. I mean, I wouldn't obviously establish it as an academic truth because it needs to be studied, but it's a beguiling, as I say. It's a tempting way of looking at the difference.
It's certainly the only place that I feel kind of at home now.
Me too.
It is a wonderful country. We have to take a break, though, because it is America, and you have to commercials.
There is that side.
Yeah, all right. We'll be right back.
What did that to you?
Banner or bandits.
The bandersnatch? Well, I'd better have a look.
What are you doing?
It needs to be purified by someone with evaporating skills, or it will fester and putrefy.
I'd rather you didn't. I'll be fine as soon as I wake up.
At least let me bind it for you. What do you call yourself?
Alice,
The Alice?
there's been some debate about that.
I never get involved in politics.
Welcome back, everybody. I'm here with Stephen Fry, who's in the Alice in Wonderland.
I was the one on the left. The cat.
I thought you looked charming as the young lady. Oh, hello. Are we still playing it?
Me.
Yeah, it's all right. Normally, the sound of the audience braying and hooting with laughter
Covers
will
any
cover up
technical
these
glitches.
technical errors. But now, tell me about your film career, because I would think that you're very clearly a very bright man. You must be terribly patient to work as an actor, because an actor, basically, you get told what to wear and where to stand and what
Indeed.
to say. Wouldn't
There are
that?
lines on the floor.
Yeah.
See, I enjoy it, but I don't think I'd enjoy it if it was all I ever did. I think
Right.
the fact that I write and do other things as well means it's rather like a wonderful holiday where you arrive in a car, a cup of coffee's put in your hand, coloured tape stand there. Really, there's your lines. You don't have to make up any new ones. The odd bit of improvisation if you want, but mostly
Yeah.
not. And repeat it a bit and watch movies in your trailer in the meantime.
And is there a part of the idea of going from England to being a Hollywood movie star? Do you think that's still a... Because they come over in droves now, these thin, interesting young people
Yes.
that can do American accents and...
I'm not cut from quite that cloth, it has to be said. The odd sort of Nazi villain or something like that is a very pleasurable thing to do in a movie.
Why are the Nazis always English?
Well, because we don't offend the English.
Yeah, that's right.
We can't moan that we've been done down because for 300 years we had an empire and
Right.
we were the top dog, so we basically have to put up with now being treated as if we are the scum, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes a part comes along. I was very lucky in the 90s to play Oscar Wilde in a movie, and that was a lead part. But generally speaking, I'm not going to get the parts that Johnny Depp has just turned down, or Zac Efron has been offered. You know?
He's good, that Zac
He's a
Efron. I
very
watched
fine
him in that.
actor. Orson Welles picture, he was terrific. Wasn't he?
Yeah, I saw him in 17 again. Not quite the same
I've not
picture,
seen
but the I watched it under protest, and I thought, this kid's actually really talented.
He's
But there
talented and likeable.
You know what? I suffer from this, and I wonder, this is a real internet thing. Beautiful people are not allowed to be talented.
No.
People get very angry when very good-looking people are talented. This Efron kid is clearly a talented actor, but yet he's very beautiful, so that I think that makes people quite angry sometimes, don't you think?
Very much so, very much so. And if they turn out to be musically gifted, and as he obviously is too, he can
Right.
dance, and that they're good at baseball or something, then they basically better look out for dark corners.
Yeah. Do you follow the darker side of celebrity culture? Do you follow the TMZs and the gossip sites?
I don't. I'm not even vaguely interested. I never know who anybody is. I'm absolutely hopeless at parties.
There's a certain power in that, I think, isn't there?
But I literally, people said, Michael, what did she say? And I go, who? And I go, oh, that woman there. Yes, Madonna. What did she say? I said,
Yeah.
oh, was that Madonna? I literally don't know.
You can tell her from her arms. She's got very strong arms and a profound Cockney accent.
Yeah, I didn't. I'd spoken to her on the phone, funnily enough. She'd asked me to play a part in a film she'd
Right.
gone to. But she always looks different every time. And I'm sure if I saw Lady Gaga at a party, I wouldn't recognise her unless she had a wedding cake on her head.
I've only heard her name, Lady Gaga. I think I've become a real fogey now.
She's rather good, though, I have to say.
Yes, that's what everybody says. Yeah, I don't know enough about it.
She's kind of extraordinary.
It's all kind of, I mean,
Yes, I know.
it's all
We get to an age where the cycles just repeat, and that's the problem.
But I think the only thing to do to save, this is what I try for myself anyway, is the only thing to try and save myself from bitterness is enjoy what they're doing now.
Yeah.
You know, rather than say, oh, things were better. Because I
Oh, I
remember
can't bet.
everyone saying, you know, when I was about that age, people saying, oh, in the 60s, that's when things were really great. And I went, really? You know, I don't believe that.
The people mean their late teens and early 20s.
That's when they were.
It doesn't
they
matter
felt
whether
good,
they were
yeah.
in the 60s, in the 70s, or the 80s. You can always justify that period as having better socks and better tunes and better haircuts, but it's not about that. It's about the fact you were young. Bliss was it in that dawn to be alive, but to be young was very
heaven. Yeah. Who was that again?
Wordsworth.
And on the eve of the French Revolution. Yeah, that's a kind of an odd way to approach it. But are you thinking that you will stay here now? Then that you will you
I have things that take me back home. My parents still live in England, and I have other, obviously, dear friends and things who live there. And there's a television show I do regularly once a year in
Once a
Britain.
year is not really regularly, Stephen. In television terms, I think that's you do an annual show.
It's not frequent, but it is regular.
Right, okay.
I know what you mean. But I could easily live here for the rest of my life, actually, I have to say.
Would it be California? Do you like the sun?
Yeah, I do. And actually, I like California.
I like California. It's a
Yeah.
very diverse state.
Northern California is probably the most beautiful part in the world.
Yeah, I don't drink
visited.
wine though. I always feel that I'm kind of missing out on something if I'm up there. You know,
That's
all
true.
that
I mean,
winery.
obviously the wine, but then the sequoia around there.
I do enjoy trees, so
Yeah.
that's.
There you are.
I'll probably take care of it then. You know. Well, if you don't want some wine, how about a lovely tree?
A lovely big tree.
Well, you've become quite an advocate for things environmental, haven't you?
Well, certainly, yes. I've just done a series of films about disappearing species, about some of the rarest species on Earth. And in fact, I've just before Christmas, I was translocating, not personally, but witnessing and filming the translocation of 4 northern white rhinoceroses back from a zoo in Prague,
Right.
Czech Republic, to Kenya. And there are only 2 others in the
Were
world.
they Czechoslovakian rhinos, or
They had been found in the Sudan, and some of them had bred there.
Right.
But there are 2 others in San Diego Zoo here in California, and otherwise that's it. There are only 6 on the planet. And there are subspecies of rhinoceros.
wouldn't the idea then to keep them in captivity and breed them before you?
It's a funny thing about these animals. They stop breeding after. They'll breed once,
Right.
but if there aren't enough males around, it's an interesting sexual social thing.
Right.
That males need to provoke others into the kind of mixture of rage, defensiveness, territoriality that sparks off a need to breed. And if they're just a couple of males who become friends, they no longer get
That's kind
sparked up.
of urbane, 2 rhinos talking about sport or something.
unfortunately, it suggests that amongst male mammals,
Right.
the need to show off fa figura, as they say in Italy, that
Right.
whole posturing macho thing,
Right.
is somehow necessary to get the old seed, you know,
It sounds a bit like that Jersey Shore thing. All these. Yeah. Have you seen that?
I've seen bits of it. I haven't watched
It's,
it.
I despair a little bit when I see stuff like that.
I want to be in touch with my inner girl.
I want to have abdominal muscles like that. That's what I'd like. That young lady has fantastic abdominal muscles.
Phenomenal.
We have to take a break,
Ripple.
do we? Do we? Yeah. Oh, well, let's do one
do
then.
that.
Let's take a break. Welcome back, everyone. Well, that's pretty much the show tonight, Stephen. We've.
I think it went really, really, really well.
I think it was okay. I was a bit nervous and stiff in the beginning, which
Those
is.
chairs over there hated me.
Yeah, no, I think they were all right. I found it a little disconcerting in the beginning.
It's strange, isn't it? I
yeah.
mean, partly an audience, I don't know what the people at home like the audience
I
or
think they
find
do,
them
yeah.
annoying. I bet people sometimes think they find it annoying, but now that it's absent, they may find
realise
it
that we're annoying.
chilly. Yes, there's nothing else to find
It's
annoying.
just that it's not the audience that's annoying, it's us. Or in particular, me, because you're not here every night, so it's got to be me who's the annoying one.
Well, they tune in for you. They don't tune in for me, let's be honest.
I don't know. But anyway, what we did do is we did conduct an experiment.
Yeah.
And I think now we'll think about what that is. But I've enjoyed myself talking to you. I always do, but it's nice to talk to you with less shouting. And I'm sorry that in our past conversations I've been so shouty.
It's your job, and you do it very, very well.
Thank you. Well, good luck in your endeavours. I think that becoming an American is a fine idea.
Yeah.
You'd be a great asset to our nation. You have to get a tattoo like me, though. Yeah.
Oh, I couldn't do that. What does that say?
It says "Join or Die." It's Benjamin Franklin did a cartoon for the Pennsylvania Gazette in 1754 about the threat of the then the natives.
Oh, right.
But it became a potent symbol of the
Because New Hampshire is live free or die, isn't
live free or die. Yeah, and the number plates where it's written are made in a prison, which
it?
is
Oh, that's ironic.
Yeah,
I
it
might
is.
have the W.H. Auden line, we must love one another or die.
That's probably all right too. It's a little less
Bit-
It's
it's a bit
a little-
gay.
yeah, it's a little. Well,
But that's
you are a bit
that's
gay.
the package, I'm afraid.
Well, we're done. I guess we'll mosey off into the night. Thank you for joining us, everyone. And I'll see you tomorrow with an audience and some skeletons. And what else do we have tomorrow? Guests. And it's actually pretty much like this, except louder. Good night, everybody.